Hi guys and welcome back to Slice of Mike. So I have moved upstairs into my bedroom. I have previously filmed my videos downstairs in the living room, but it wasn't working out really because I have roommates and there just wasn't enough time for me to film because they'd be home. So I moved back here into the bedroom. And actually, if you've watched my very first two videos on my channel, they were filmed up here in the bedroom and they're awkward, but just looking at the room, you might be able to tell that this is the same background. I've twerked things around a little. Twerked? Tweaked. Why did I say twerked? I don't know. I've tweaked things around a little bit to make it more visually appealing. Maybe I failed, I don't know. And I'm still figuring things out in terms of lighting, so bear with me here. This is my first video in the new location. But today I'm here to talk about Grasshopper Jungle by Andrew Smith, which I just finished a few days ago, and I have a ton to say about it. So as always in my reviews, I'm going to start with a brief synopsis of the book. If you already know what the book is about or you don't want to know anything more about the plot itself, you can skip ahead to the actual review portion, and I will link that below, and you can just go right into my thoughts on the book. So in this book, there are two young guys who live in rural Iowa, and they are best friends. You have Austin, who is something of an amateur historian, and he basically keeps a log of everything that happens to him and his friends each day, and he has this huge collection of notebooks where he catalogs basically the day's events. Austin's best friend is named Robbie, and Robbie is gay and loves Austin without a doubt, and Austin knows about this, but Austin also has a girlfriend named Shannon who he's definitely very much attracted to, and he might have feelings for Robbie. He hasn't really figured that out yet, so there's this awkward love triangle that takes place. Austin basically has to figure out if he is attracted to Robbie or to Shannon, and which one of them he wants to be with. So in the midst of all this sexual confusion and chaos, it turns out that Robbie and Austin have inadvertently caused the end of the world. 50 or so years ago, there was a scientist named Grady McKendry who was doing all sorts of wonky experiments for the government. He had this commission for the US military, which essentially turned humans into giant man-eating bugs. Needless to say, dude was crazy. He went missing, but not all of his experiments did. Fast forward to the present, and some bullies that Austin and Robbie know from school have stolen one of the experiments, and they have unleashed the plague that turns people into bugs onto the town where they live. So then the characters spend the rest of the book trying to avoid getting eaten by giant bugs, trying to figure out who or what they are attracted to, and also trying to prevent the complete collapse of human society. So good luck with that. I'd like to talk separately about the characters and then also about the writing style and the story itself, so let's start with the characters. So first of all, this is the first Andrew Smith book that I have read, so I can't really speak to his other books, but I was definitely impressed by his ability to create three-dimensional characters. Austin was by far the most well-developed character. We learned a lot about his family history and his wants and needs and his desires. I really liked Austin's character. I felt like he had this great blend of humor and quirkiness and bravery and intelligence. So basically all the attributes of a Gryffindor. Robbie, on the other hand, was kind of sulky, and that really bothered me because it was his defining quality. For example, Austin and Robbie get in a fight, and Robbie stays home from school because he doesn't want to face Austin. He's too embarrassed or shy. I'm not really sure. Now, that may be a realistic emotional response. I couldn't say for sure. I didn't have anything like that happen to me in high school, but to me it just seemed a bit over the top. And then you have Shannon, who is Austin's girlfriend, and she is definitely the character that we learn the least about, which really sucked because there aren't that many female characters in this book, and I feel like Shannon would have been a great opportunity to get that perspective going in the mix, but it just didn't happen. I also wanted to talk about the writing, which I really enjoyed. I know there are people that have read this book and hated it because they found it to be repetitive and overly crude, I guess, but I thought it really worked, and I liked that quality of the book a lot. So if you haven't read this book, the main quirk of Grasshopper Jungle is that there are little blurbs of history for each character sprinkled throughout the text, kind of like the love and sorrows, the life and sorrows, the something and sorrows of Ava Lavender, how we get her family history with her grandmother and then her mom and then Ava Lavender herself. It's similar to that, except more paced throughout the book. The writing in this book also reminded me a lot of Chuck Palahniuk, partly because Chuck uses a lot of profanity and sex in his books, and there's a lot of that here as well, and partly because Chuck also has this repetition thing going on where he repeats certain phrases and sentences throughout the book, which at first you're confused about the significance of them, and then in the end you have this emotional response tied to those phrases, so every time you read them you feel this little tug on your heart. Another thing that I really appreciate about this book is that it explores sexuality realistically. I think it illustrated effectively the confusion that LGBTQ individuals go through during their teenage years and then sometimes even into adulthood. But I also felt like the zaniness of the book, you know, the whole end of the world thing, ending really detracted from the underlying story, which was the relationship between Austin and Robbie. And what really bugged me, no pun intended, is that there was no resolution at all between Austin and Robbie and Austin and Shannon. Those relationships that are forming the foundation of the story are just left hanging at the end of the book, which was really frustrating to me. And like I mentioned, I found Robbie to be a bit of a grumpy pants, and he's not a particularly good role model for gay or lesbian teenagers, I don't think. Granted, he is a teenager, so if you're also a teenager going through these emotions, I think you'll definitely identify with him. But as somebody who has thankfully moved past the confusion of those teenage years, I was hoping for a bit more from his story, maybe moving past his love for Austin, finding somebody he could actually be happy with, but that didn't happen, so again, I was disappointed by that lack of development. So overall, I like this book a lot. I thought it was a solid, funny, emotionally moving story. There were tender moments, there were suspenseful moments, and like I said, there was this really productive conversation of sexuality that I liked and appreciated in the book. But I did have a few reservations with this book, mainly the fact that I felt cheated out of a connection with Robbie and Shannon by the book's unerring focus on Austin, because he's the main character, so we need to learn more about him, when I really wanted to learn more about the supporting characters because they were interesting, so that was a bit disappointing to me in the end. I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars. I really wanted to give it 5 out of 5 stars, but I feel like 4 out of 5 is a more accurate depiction of my thoughts. Like I said, I had a few minor reservations, but overall I thought it was a very, very good story. So I recommend it, but don't expect it to be perfect. Very few books are perfect. This one definitely isn't. That's okay though. So if you guys have read this book yourselves, I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Feel free to leave a comment below. If it's on your TBR, tell me why. Hopefully I haven't turned you off to it, because I do want you to read it, but I also wanted to give my honest thoughts on the book. So yeah, that's it for today. I hope you guys have a great week, and I will talk to you all in a few days. Bye!